Welcome, gentle listener. I am Voldemort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and war gear of the Warhammer 40k universe, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace. There is only time for war. And today, I intend to take a slightly lighter look at the lore of the setting, for I sometimes forget my own words, to relax, to have fun with it all. So here is an attempt at sharing my joy of some of the most ridiculous, amusing, and horrifying weapons in the grim darkness of the far future, and more specifically, grenades. Because when it comes to this utterly over-the-top grim-dark setting, you have a simple choice, to laugh or cry. And I always choose to laugh, and I advise you to do the same. It can improve your life immeasurably. Just don't take things so seriously. So, gentle listener, here is my top 5 grenades of the dark future. In position 5, we have the Monoball grenade. A thing of clearly Xenos heritage, it is rarely used by the Imperium, and only elite units such as Inquisitors have been able to access them. For the Monoball grenade is a very lethal thing indeed, but its real appeal is in the mess it makes. The sight of one of these little puppies going off will void the bowels of most and shatter the elan of nearly all. Yes, that means that you cack yourself and run. But here is the why of the matter. Now this wee ball that flies in your direction is a metal orb that contains a field within. Now that field has coils of monofilament wire, all twisted around inside of it. Monofilament wire is a substance so lithe, so thin, that it cuts on the molecular level, which means no amount of armor or protection will save you. Well, except perhaps a power or void shield of some form. So imagine a ball of cat's cradle wire, so thin it looks like liquid moonlight, all stuck inside the whittle bowl. But when the grenade cracks open and the field goes down, the effects are stomach-churning. For the wires will lash out and slice through everything in their path in a completely random and unpredictable way, so it is literally impossible to dodge these lines. For the old hand, it's like the chap in The Fist of the North Star, slicey slicey. For everyone else of less age or greater taste, it is like thin slicers coming out and cutting all, meaning that, as they hit people, the gossamer chain can whip around them, slicing off limbs perfectly, as there is so little resistance. Which means that when the Monoball grenade goes off, it leaves a charnel house, as people are reduced to piles of individual severed segments, all fallen down like a pillar of broken stones. The blood oozes or sprays out into the air and makes a mist that will seem almost like it is raining, as all of the pieces slump down under the weight of gravity alone. Nasty. Now, tell me that sight alone would not make you at least consider your life choices. The Emperor protects, eh? Well, not when these little horrors are about, I can assure you. Number 4. The Stasis grenade. The ultimate MacGuffin for any would-be sci-fi writer. I present to you the Stasis grenade. First seen in the original publication that started it all, Rogue Trader. This was a standard tool in the box in those weird days of the late 80s. Simply put, the grenade is the center point of a detonation that creates a stasis field in a predetermined radius. Everything inside the edges of the blast zone is then held in time, cut from the warp and weft of the universe. Nothing outside can penetrate the area of effect, as it is simply not there. For the stasis field cuts the beings inside from the universe, like a snapshot of a time long gone. One cannot reach into the tableau to interact with its players. In this way, I believe it was that Reboot Gilliman was saved when he received a fatal blow from Fulgrim. Perhaps that could have been better termed, but the fact remains. The Primarch of the Ultramarines was saved and placed in a wonderful display for millennia awaiting his salvation. Then it came at the hands of an adept of Mars and a female Xenos follower of a god. a profit, one might say. And this was nothing if not ironic. But I digress. The ability to freeze time is hilarious in the hands of a creative writer, and the very manifestation of plot armor, but it was oh so much more annoying in the hands of the enemy back in the day. When one of their little munchkins could sneak forward and lob a single grenade at your unit of Terminators, or land raid a battle tank, for it would be stunned for an indeterminate period, utterly unable to take any action in the fray, stuck in time. Simple enough, vexing enough, to have your center sledgehammer or anvil unit unceremoniously removed from the fray. But 'twas a much sillier time then, for we played the game as a semi-RPG campaign, not a match-up of two armies in any semblance of a competitive way. Not better, just different. Of course, there are no dungeon masters to keep things on track these days, so simplification of the more weird elements had to occur, I guess. But sometimes I do yearn for a time of adventuring with armies and units, hunting through ruins and encountering buglies of a myriad form. Good times. The Stasis Grenade. When you want to take someone out of the battle, or plot, but simply cannot afford for them to be destroyed. Either because you lack the firepower on the board and in the game, or if you are just test driving someone else's character, if you are hammering keyboards for others' entertainment and edification. In number 5. No, sorry, that's 2. I mean 3. Yes, definitely the number 3, and thou shalt not count above it. The Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch. Now only referred to as a Holy Orb, as otherwise people might take a leaf out of someone else's playbook and copyright strike them. This is clearly the Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch, from the Monty Python film Holy Grail, which if you haven't seen, you really should. But it's a bit dated, I guess. In fact, I'm not sure you should really. It was of its time, I reckon. But tell me what you think, because after all, when things are fading down like this, you can barely make out what I'm saying. Get on with it! Yes, get on with it! Sorry, let's get on with it. It's not much of an entry really, as this is simply an orb-like explosive that contains flechette-effect metals. It does also contain holy unguents and bombs. But I won't go into bombs. Very dangerous things. But as this is Warhammer 40k and the warp and faith are a thing, this means that the explosive has also got a healthy dollop of faith power in the fragments. Especially dangerous to Neverborn, the demons. It would be akin to firing a grenade with holy water inside. Messy. Well, for the unclean, the heretic, the traitor, and the witch, of course. Which means it's fine, because they deserve to be melted. In position 2, the Vortex Bomb. Now this terror had its own template in some editions, as I hope you can see on the screen. Well, if you do anything but listen to my videos, which would put you in the definite minority. I know what I'm good for. But what does a Vortex Bomb do? Scares the willies out of your opposition is one thing, of course, but this is due to the lethality of the device. Again, this one might seem to have some background in the Xenos tech, but it could of course just be archaeotech from the dark age of technology. Humanity was ever so clever in that period. But why then do I observe or postulate this possibility? Well, for the simple reason that this weapon is akin to the Wraith cannons and D-cannons of the craft world Eldar, as defined in Rogue Trader. To quote, the Vortex shell creates a small disruption in the space-time fabric, a spinning whirlpool of destruction like a tiny black hole. End quote. Now this has moved on somewhat, and the later versions of the Vortex Grenade or Bomb is as follows. To quote, the Vortex Grenade. The Vortex Grenade is a rare and deadly weapon which utilizes complex warp technology to create a vortex between real space and the warp on activation. They are very difficult to produce, with only the Adeptus Mechanicus manufacturing them, and are not issued to regular troops, but to important Imperial agents such as Inquisitors or Assassins. The Vortex Grenade takes the form of a weighty sphere, approximately the size of the fist of a grown man, consisting of an outer shell, which encases a delicate and temperamental warp mechanism. The designs on the device date back to the dark age of technology. When the grenade is activated, it creates a tiny rift between real space and the warp, a rift that becomes a vortex in the very fabric of space. In appearance, the vortex is a ball of glowing blackness, like a small black hole. Everyone and everything encompassed by the vortex is destroyed. All matter and energy is drawn through the vortex, and it is turned into the very stuff of the warp. Vortices are doubly dangerous, as once they are created, they behave in an unpredictable and uncontrollable manner. They may shrink, expand, vanish, remain for long periods of time, move, or even divide. For this reason, they can be as deadly to their user as their intended targets. End quote. Hence it mimics the weapons of the Eldar, as the Wraith Cannon and D-Cannon do precisely this as well. They tear open reality, allow the warp to smash the target. Now again, this was a hilarious device when it could be fielded. I did enjoy spending the points and fixing this wee gadget to the front of one of my most innocuous models, hidden somewhere amongst the throngs. It would nip forward and then launch its payload into the most important, or annoying, target possible. Then promptly get shot to Swiss cheese, of course, but by then the damage had been done. For even a super heavy tank or Titan may need their leg or tracks if clipped, or their head or central cab, if the thrower is accurate. Not that we had those back then, but it's fun to think about. For nothing can stop a vortex grenade except perhaps a void shield. But I would have to look into that. Exciting, eh? And finally, the moment you have been awaiting, Baltimor's top pick for the most amusing and annoying grenade in all of the history of this madcap game and setting. In first place, the Virus Grenade. Simple in its principle, effective in its use, the Virus Grenade. Now when I hear of these weapons, I have to admit that few would ever understand why I would always chuckle at the minimum, go puce-faced, with sweaty wheezing gasping at air while slamming a palm or fist into a table or wall whenever I hear of these majestic weapons. For the Virus Bomb does exactly what it says on the tin. It erupts and spreads a virulent airborne virus that is so potent it is instantly, but agonizingly, lethal. Now some might think, well, it's just a blight grenade, isn't it? And effectively, they would be correct. From the lore perspective at the very least. But it is in the fond memories of fuckery performed that I must put this projectile explosive as my top of the pops. Because when it first came out, it was a thing of horror to orcs. And my biggest brother had a swiftly expanding orc army. I played Space Marines or Eldar then. I was young, I had less discernment than of now, and all of us started with Marines really, don't I? It was always Marines. But I had the penchant for equipping a virus grenade and then unleashing it on him. Now in the day, when a virus bomb went off, if it killed anyone, then it would start a new explosion as the virus mutated. This would be a new plume of yuck that would then cause more explosions if anyone was slain. So much to the chagrin of my brother's he was virus bombed, and it was perhaps fluke, perhaps Lady Luck spitting on him or shining on me. But every single time I did this, I slaughtered more than 60% of his army in the one fell swoop. Now, despite the hidings I took while laughing so hard I could not breathe, I still hold these as some of my most desperate exhibitions of schadenfreude. Not something I would do today, nor something I would enjoy being done to me today. For things have become so much more serious in many regards, and I do often look back on those days of fun and far less structure, and think perhaps, just perhaps, in all of the regulation, harmonization, equalization and streamlining, that perhaps the hobby has become a little too stodgy for the hilarity of the virus grenade. Just as it is no longer a place for orc mobs attacking each other at the drop of a hat, or Blood Angels Devastator squads dropping their heavy weapons and charging into the nearest enemy units with combat knives at the ready. So, just try to remember, it's supposed to be fun. It's not you against the person across from you. You are no better a human if you beat them, certainly no better a strategist, because it isn't you beating them. It's the armies that are fighting each other. It's the warriors and the dice gods that win or lose the battle. You and your playmate are nothing more than divine observers, ready to raise or lower a thumb to decide the fate of the armies and war gear you've brought to the fray. But trust me, if you actually remember you are playing together, that the battle is on the board, not in the clubhouse or kitchen, then you will really enjoy this hobby one heck of a lot more. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.